The first time my ex-wife looked at the little boy sitting on my couch and asked if he was my son, she did it with our 9-year-old daughter standing between us and her boyfriend waiting outside in the car. For a second, I honestly thought Dana was trying to be funny in that dry, nasty way she had when she wanted to poke at me, without sounding openly cruel. Then I saw the look on her face. She was studying that child, like she had just uncovered proof that I had been lying to everyone for years, and I felt something cold move through me because I already knew one thing about Dana. If an idea got into her head, she would not keep it to herself. What made it worse was that 3 months earlier, I had met a woman named Grace, and from the start I had the feeling that getting close to her was either going to be the best thing that had happened to me in years or the exact kind of mistake a lonely man talks himself into because he is tired of eating dinner alone. My name is Mark. I was 38 then, living in Columbus, divorced for 4 years, working a regular job, paying support on time, doing my best with my daughter, and telling myself I was fine being alone even though I had stopped believing that a long time before. Most Fridays, a few guys from work would head to a bar a couple blocks from the shop. Cheap beer, greasy baskets of fries, a game on one TV no one was really watching. I usually went because it was easier than sitting in my apartment staring at the walls. That night looked like it was going to be the same as always until Luke from shipping waved over a woman I had never seen before and introduced her as his wife's sister, Grace. She sat near me because the place was crowded, and it started the way those things usually start. Small talk, nothing important. Where do you work? Do you come here often? How do you know everybody? But with Grace, it did not stay small for long. There was something about the way she listened, not dramatic, not flirtatious in any loud way. She just seemed fully there, like she was actually hearing me instead of waiting for her turn to talk. Her hair was pulled back in a loose knot. She had tired eyes but warm ones, and every now and then she smiled like she was almost surprised by herself. I found out she had a little boy. I found out she was recently separated. That part came out carefully, almost like she regretted bringing it up as soon as she said it. I did not push. I knew what that kind of subject could feel like. I had my own version of it. I told her I was divorced. 4 years by then. My ex, Dana, had left me, and by the time enough time had passed for me to stop replaying it every night, she was already serious with someone else. We had a daughter named Lily, and the only reason Dana and I still talked at all was because of her. Our conversations were about pickup times, dentist appointments, school stuff, shoes Lily had outgrown, and whatever new annoyance Dana wanted to slide into the middle of those practical things. That was it. As far as my marriage was concerned, it was dead and buried. At least I thought it was. Grace did not stay long that first night. She and Luke's wife got up before the rest of us, said goodnight, and left together. The whole place seemed flatter after that. I stayed maybe another 20 minutes, but my head was gone. I kept replaying the way she had looked at me when I made her laugh over something stupid about a broken forklift at work. It had been a long time since I noticed a woman leaving a room, longer than I wanted to admit. The next week, Luke leaned against my station with that grin people get when they know something before you do. He asked if I wanted some good news. I told him to stop playing around and say it. He said Grace had asked about me. I remember the ridiculous rush that went through me. I actually looked away for a second because I did not want him enjoying it too much. He laughed, told me not to act cool now, and said she had liked meeting me. I told him to tell her I had liked meeting her too, and before lunch was over, he had made sure numbers got traded. That was how it started. A text from her that night, then a few more, then a pattern. Good morning, texts before work. Funny little updates in the middle of the day. A picture once of a cartoon dinosaur sticker her son had slapped on the side of her fridge. Nothing heavy at first. That came later. I learned from Luke, and then from Grace herself, that the breakup with the father of her son was fresh. Very fresh. They had never legally married, but they had lived together, built a life, had a baby, and only about 2 months earlier, he had moved out. His name was Andrew. According to Grace, he had left because of another woman. If I had been thinking clearly, I would have treated that as a warning sign the size of a billboard. Anybody with sense knows 2 months is not much time when there is a child involved. People say things are over. People swear they are done. Then one late-night conversation happens, one apology happens, one lonely weekend happens, and suddenly they are trying again. Luke even warned me without sugarcoating it. He said Grace seemed serious about moving on, but if I got attached too fast, that was on me because the ground under her feet was probably still shifting. He was right. I knew he was right. I told myself not to get ahead of things. Then I went and did exactly that. When Grace and I finally met up alone, she left her son with her mother for a few hours and met me at a place downtown that was nicer than the bar, but still casual enough not to feel like I was trying too hard. She got there 10 minutes late, cheeks pink from the cold, apologizing because her mother kept texting that the baby was fussy and might not settle. Even sitting across from me, she kept glancing down at her phone every few minutes. It should have ruined the mood. Somehow it did the opposite. It made her feel real, tired, distracted, trying, stretched thin. We talked about all the boring grown-up damage no one imagines when they are younger. Rent, childcare, lawyers, exhaustion. The strange humiliation of rebuilding a life while pretending you are handling it better than you are. She told me Andrew had hurt her more than she wanted to explain. She said some things were impossible to come back from. She said she would never trust him again. I remember those words because later they kept coming back to me in the ugliest way. That night ended early because her mother said the boy would not stop crying. We stood outside under a streetlight and I kissed her. It was not some wild thing, just one of those slow first kisses where both people already know they want the second one. I drove home feeling lighter than I had felt in years. After that, everything sped up. We kept texting. We started seeing each other whenever schedules allowed it. Sometimes for coffee, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just for an hour, because that was all she had. And then one night she came over to my apartment, after her son was asleep at her mother's place, and she stayed late enough that I did not even bother pretending I wanted the evening to end with anything but her in my bed. Once that line was crossed, I was done for. I am not proud of how fast my mind gave her too much space. I was old enough to know better, but loneliness does something to you. It makes ordinary attention feel rare. It makes warmth feel deeper than it might really be. Grace was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. It was the way she curled one leg under herself when she sat on my couch, the way she laughed with her whole face and then, 2 minutes later, went quiet, like she had remembered something heavy. The way my apartment stopped feeling temporary when she was in it. A few weeks in, she started bringing her son over sometimes when she could not leave him with anyone. His name was Noah. He was 1.5 years old then, all round cheeks and little sneakers and random bursts of crying that came out of nowhere. My place was not exactly set up for a toddler, but I adjusted. I moved breakable stuff higher, bought cheap plastic cups, started keeping crackers in the pantry. It happened so naturally that I did not stop to ask myself whether I was stepping into something deeper than I was prepared for. Grace seemed to notice that. Once on a Sunday, she watched me kneeling on the floor trying to get Noah interested in a toy truck instead of my TV remote, and she smiled at me in this soft, searching way. She asked if I was sure all of this was okay. I told her yes. I told her I liked having them there. That was true. What I did not say was that by then I was already picturing things I had no business picturing. More weekends, trips somewhere small, holidays, her toothbrush next to mine. Normal life. The kind of thoughts that sound harmless until reality walks in and reminds you it has not signed off on any of it. Reality showed up one Sunday morning, wearing a leather jacket and an irritated expression. I had left my phone charging in the bedroom and taken a shower. When I came back out, the doorbell was ringing again and again, sharp and impatient. I opened the door in jeans and a t-shirt and found Dana standing there with Lily beside her, both of them framed by grey daylight. Dana barely looked at me before asking why I was not answering my phone. I said it had been charging. She said she had somewhere to be with her boyfriend and needed me to keep Lily longer than planned. Then, without waiting for much of an answer, she asked if she could use the bathroom and stepped inside. I still remember the moment she stopped. Grace was on the couch with Noah curled beside her, half watching some kid's show with the volume low. Dana froze in the hallway like she had walked into the wrong apartment. Her eyes moved from Grace to the boy to me. I introduced them because what else was I supposed to do? I said Grace was my girlfriend. Dana repeated the word girlfriend like I had handed her a strange object. She did not answer Grace properly, did not smile, just gave one of those tight little nods and went to the bathroom. The whole apartment changed temperature. Grace looked at me. I looked at the bathroom door. Lily, who had already gotten used to adults behaving badly around her, just slipped past all of us and disappeared into her room with her phone. When Dana came back out, she did not say goodbye. She said she would return that night and left. The silence after she walked out felt ugly. Grace was the one who broke it. She said my ex seemed jealous. I laughed it off right away. I told her Dana had not been jealous of me even when we were married. Dana had left me. Dana had a boyfriend. Dana did not care. Grace kept looking at me with this calm little expression that made me feel like I was the only person in the room who did not understand what had just happened. She said she was a woman and knew what she had seen. I shrugged it away because I wanted to. Also because admitting Grace might be right would have meant reopening a part of my life. I had no interest in reopening. Dana and I were finished. End of story. That was the version I preferred. Lily stayed buried in her phone for most of the afternoon. I hated how much time she spent on it, but fighting that battle every weekend had become exhausting, especially because Dana let her do basically whatever she wanted. Later, I drove Grace and Noah home, picked up pizza on the way back, and settled in with Lily to wait for Dana. Her boyfriend stayed outside in the car when she arrived that evening. Dana came in alone. Instead of taking Lily and leaving, she stood there in my living room asking one question after another about Grace. How long had we been together? Was it serious? Did Lily know her well? Had Grace been around a lot? There was a tone to it that irritated me. Not concern, not curiosity, something sharper. Then she looked toward the door as if Grace and Noah might still be there and said almost casually, "What about that little boy?" I asked what about him. She said, "Do not tell me you have another child and hid it this whole time." At first I honestly thought I had heard her wrong. I stared at her. She kept going. She said she had looked at the boy closely, and he kind of resembled me. She said if I had been hiding another kid from everybody, maybe she needed to talk to her lawyer and revisit the support arrangement. She said it with that small mocking smile that always made me want to either laugh in disbelief or put my fist through drywall. I told her she was out of her mind. I reminded her I had known Grace for less than 2 months, and Noah was almost 2 years old. I remember actually counting backward in my head because the accusation was so absurd, I felt like I needed math to stay calm. Dana just watched me. Then she lifted one shoulder like she was not fully convinced, called for Lily and left. I should have known right then it would not end there. By the following week, that ridiculous idea had spread through both families. Dana had apparently told her mother, and her mother told Dana's sister. And somehow it jumped from there into side conversations, then into calls, then into this vague cloud of suspicion that hung over me every time my phone buzzed. My own cousin called me sounding weirdly careful, like he was fishing without wanting to admit it. Dana's mother made some snide comment about men leading double lives. Even one of my aunts, who should have known better, asked if there was anything I wanted to clear up before people started making assumptions. That was the part that got under my skin. Not just Dana saying something stupid in my living room, people believing it enough to repeat it. How stupid did they think I was? How secretive? How reckless? And under all of that, there was another feeling I did not want to look at too closely. Shame, maybe. Not because it was true, because once a lie gets attached to your name, you still have to walk around wearing it while other people decide whether it fits. I told Grace about it, trying to make it sound more ridiculous than upsetting. She listened quietly, then said she was sorry. She asked if this kind of thing was normal with Dana. I told her no, at least not like this. Dana could be difficult, controlling, sarcastic, but inventing a hidden child was a new level even for her. Grace said very little after that. At the time, I read it as sympathy. Looking back, I am less sure. Still, we kept seeing each other. If anything, I leaned in harder. Maybe because I wanted something in my life that felt uncomplicated after the mess with Dana. Maybe because I was stubborn and refused to let Dana poison this too. Maybe because I had already gotten too attached to pull back with dignity. A few weekends later, Grace and Noah came over on a Sunday and stayed almost the whole day. It was cold outside, one of those flat Ohio days where the sky looks like wet cement. Noah napped for an hour on a blanket I spread on the bedroom floor because he would not settle anywhere else. Grace curled up beside me on the couch and rested her head on my shoulder. We watched some forgettable movie and talked over half of it. She told me little pieces about her childhood, not everything, just fragments. Her mother worrying too much, her sister always meddling, the way she had rushed into adulthood before she understood what it cost. I told her things too, how after the divorce I had stopped trusting my own judgment, how for a long time I confused peace with emptiness and called it stability because that sounded healthier. She rubbed her thumb over my hand while I talked. It felt like being understood. Maybe I only wanted it to. That evening when I drove her home, she kissed me in the car and then sat there a second longer with her hand on the door handle. I asked what she was thinking about. She gave me a small smile and said she was just tired. That answer would become more common. I did not question it enough. Around that time, I started noticing little things I told myself not to overread. Moments where she seemed distracted in the middle of a conversation. Times when she would go quiet after checking her phone. Once I asked who kept texting her so late, and she said it was her mother. Another time she said Noah had a fever and she was stressed. Another time she just said life was messy right now. All of that was believable. She had a toddler, a recent breakup, family all over her business. I did not want to become the suspicious guy who needed explanations for every silence, so I swallowed it. I also had Lily to think about. As much as I liked Grace, I had a rule in my head that my daughter came first, and I was careful about how much overlap there was. Lily had already had enough instability from the divorce. I did not want her getting attached to someone who might disappear. That meant sometimes telling Grace no when she hinted about doing things altogether more often. It also meant not saying certain things out loud, even when I wanted to. That was my limit. I would not drag my daughter too deep into a relationship unless I felt sure it had real ground under it. I still thought I was being cautious. Then came Friday. I remember the exact feeling of that day more than the exact weather. Something off from the start. Grace had been a little distant in her messages all afternoon. Not rude, not cold, just thin. I asked if everything was okay. She said she was fine, just worn out. Then, later in the evening, she sent me a message that made my stomach tighten before I even knew why. She said she was going to keep to herself that weekend, stay home, rest, and be away from her phone. She said we could talk Monday. That was it. On paper, there was nothing scandalous about that message. A tired single mum wanting space. A rough week, a quiet weekend. Normal. But the wording bothered me. So did the suddenness. So did the fact that when I asked what happened, her response did not really answer the question. She just repeated that she needed a little time to herself. I sent one more message later that night. Then one Saturday morning, they were delivered but not opened. That unsettled me more than it should have. I told myself not to be pathetic. People are allowed to want space. People are allowed to go quiet for 2 days. I knew all of that. Still, the whole thing sat wrong in my chest. It was not only that she was pulling back. It was the feeling that something had already changed, and I had not been informed yet. By Saturday afternoon, I was restless enough to text Luke's wife and ask if she had heard from Grace. I tried to keep it casual. She responded in a way that made everything worse. She said it was probably better if Grace and I talked directly because it was between us. Between us. That phrase lodged in me like a splinter. If nothing was happening, there was no between us. There was no reason for that careful tone. No reason for that distance. I read the message 3 times. Then I put my phone face down on the kitchen counter and just stood there staring at the sink. Sunday was worse. I had Lily with me part of the day, so I had to act normal. We got burgers. We watched half a movie she barely paid attention to. She showed me a stupid dance video on her phone. I smiled in the right places, but underneath all of it I was listening for my phone, checking it every 20 minutes, then hating myself for checking it. I did not call Grace non-stop. I did not drive to her place. I did not make a scene. I wanted to. That is the truth. But I would not be that man. I had too much pride for that, and I had Lily watching me. So I waited. Monday dragged like punishment. At work, I could not settle into anything. Every little sound from my phone made my pulse jump. Around lunch, I found Luke near the loading area and asked as casually as I could manage whether he had heard from Grace. The look on his face hit me before his words did. He seemed confused that I was even asking. Then he said, "Wait, she has not talked to you yet." That sentence took all the air out of the moment. I asked him what that meant. He hedged instantly, said maybe he was misunderstanding things, said I should just talk to Grace, but the damage was done. I could see it in his expression. He knew something, or thought he knew something, and more importantly, he had assumed I already knew it too. I tried calling Grace after work. No answer. I drove home in that numb, over-focused state a person gets into when their mind is running ahead of them and filling every gap with worst-case versions. Maybe she wanted to end it. Maybe something happened with Noah. Maybe Andrew had shown back up. Maybe the whole weekend had been about him. Every possibility felt both stupid and possible. It was almost evening when the message came through. I saw her name on my screen and felt actual relief for half a second. I opened it standing in my kitchen with my keys still in my hand. She wrote that she wanted to let me know she and Andrew had gotten back together. She said she was sorry. She said it would be better if we did not talk anymore. That was the whole thing, a few lines, clean, final, flat enough to make me wonder if she had rewritten it 3 times first, or if it had cost her nothing to send. I do not know how long I stood there. I read it once, then again, like there might be some hidden softness in it on the 4th try, some clue that this was more complicated than it sounded. But no, it said exactly what it said. While I'd been spending the weekend wondering whether she was tired or overwhelmed or upset with me, she had apparently gone back to the man she swore she would never trust again. I sat down at my kitchen table and stared at the wall. Then anger came in fast. Not because she chose him. She had the right to choose whoever she wanted. I knew that. The thing that burned was the way she had done it. The lie of omission on Friday. The silence all weekend. The careful little request for space when what she really meant was that she was deciding whether I still existed in her life. It made me feel less like a man she had been seeing for months and more like a backup plan she did not need anymore. I called her once, no answer. A minute later, another message came through. She said please stop calling or texting, that she had gotten back with the father of her child and wanted me to respect that. There are messages you never forget because of how ordinary they look compared to what they do to you. That was one of them. Later that night, I spoke to Luke. He admitted he had known, or suspected enough to know where things were heading. He said he had not wanted to get involved. He reminded me gently but still that he had warned me in the beginning how recent the breakup was. He was not wrong, and somehow that made it worse, because now I could not even enjoy the clean comfort of blaming her alone. I had walked into this with my eyes half open. I had heard every warning. I just chose the version I wanted. The ugliest thought came after midnight when I still could not sleep. It was that maybe she had kept me warm in case things with Andrew did not work out. Maybe that whole weekend was not about her suddenly realizing she loved him again. Maybe it was about testing whether he would really come back, whether he would really choose her. And once he did, I became unnecessary. I had no proof of that. Maybe it was unfair. Maybe it was exactly right. What I knew for sure was this. In 3 months, I had let her into my apartment, my bed, my routine, my thinking, even the edges of my daughter's life. And in the end, I found out I was disposable by text. And somehow, that was not even the part that would hurt me the longest. For the first few days after Grace's message, I moved around like somebody who had taken a bad hit to the head and was pretending he was fine because other people were watching. I went to work. I answered what needed answering. I picked Lily up when it was my turn. I paid bills. I stood in grocery store lines. I nodded when people talked to me. From the outside, nothing had changed, except maybe I was quieter. Inside, it felt like a wall had dropped on me, and I was still under it, trying to decide which part of me hurt the worst. The humiliation was almost harder than the heartbreak. If she had looked me in the face and ended it, I still would have been wrecked. But at least I could have attached some dignity to the memory. Instead, I had 2 short messages on my phone and a weekend that now looked completely different. Every hour of that silence got reinterpreted. Every vague answer. Every time she had looked at her phone and gone distant. Every time she had said she was tired. My mind kept circling back, trying to pinpoint the exact moment I had stopped being a man she was building something with and turned into a temporary place to land. I barely slept that week. When I did, it was light and ugly, the kind where you wake up with your heart racing before your brain has even caught up. I would reach for my phone out of habit, and then remember there was nothing coming from her except the silence she had already chosen. What made it harder was that I could not even grieve in peace. Dana had apparently not gotten tired of her little theory. If anything, she had gotten more comfortable with it. A couple days after Grace ended things, Dana called to talk about Lily's school schedule and somehow steered the conversation back toward Grace and Noah. She asked in this fake light tone whether my special little family was doing okay. I told her to stop. She laughed. Actually laughed. Then she said she was just asking because people had been talking, and if I had created some mess that might affect Lily, she had a right to know. I asked what people. She named 2 of her relatives and then one of mine. My own aunt, apparently, had said the timing around that little boy was strange. That was when I realized the rumor had grown legs while I was busy getting my heart handed back to me in pieces. I lost my temper. Not screaming, but cold. I told Dana she needed to keep my name out of her mouth and stop using Lily as an excuse to play games. Dana went quiet for half a second, and then she did what she always did when she felt herself losing the moral upper hand. She turned injured. She said she was only asking questions any mother would ask. She said if the truth was so harmless, I should not be this defensive. That was the moment I understood something ugly and useful. It did not matter whether she believed the rumor. Maybe she did, maybe she did not. The point was that it gave her leverage, attention, and a reason to insert herself into my life again under the mask of concern. I had a choice then. Keep arguing with her and feed it, or draw a hard line. That was the first real decision I made after Grace blew my life apart. I told Dana that from then on, unless it involved Lily directly, I was not discussing my personal life with her at all. If she had questions about pickup times, school, or medical stuff, fine. Anything else I would not answer. Then I hung up before she could twist it into another fight. I sat there after the call with my hand still tight around the phone. It was a small thing, maybe, but it was the first moment that week I felt like I had done something instead of just absorbing damage. Of course, drawing a line with Dana did not mean she respected it. 2 days later, Lily came over for the weekend and asked me, in the middle of eating mac and cheese at my kitchen table, whether I had another kid. She asked it the way kids ask the worst questions, plainly, no drama, just wanting the truth. I put my fork down and looked at her. She looked embarrassed right away, which told me she had heard it from Dana's side first and probably not in a clean way. I asked who had said that to her. She mumbled something about her grandma and her mum talking. Then she said she did not think it was true, but everybody was acting weird. That hit me harder than anything Dana had said directly. Adults can be ugly to each other. That is bad enough. But dragging a child into a stupid rumor because you are jealous or bitter or bored is its own kind of filth. I told Lily no. I told her Noah was Grace's son and had nothing to do with me except that I had cared about him because I cared about his mother. I kept it simple because she was 9 and because she deserved clarity, not an adult speech. Lily nodded, but she was studying my face while I talked, like she was checking for cracks. Then she asked if Grace was not coming around anymore. I said no. She stirred her noodles for a second and said that was probably better, because she had not liked how tense everything felt the last time anyway. Kids see more than people think. That night, after Lily went to bed, I walked into the living room and just stood there looking at the couch where Grace had sat with Noah. One of his little sticker marks was still faintly stuck to the side of my TV stand. A dinosaur. Green. Ridiculous how something that small could make my throat close. I peeled it off and threw it away. That should have been the end of it. It was not. The next week, I found out through Luke that Grace and Andrew were fully back together. Not maybe. Not trying to work things out slowly. Fully back. he had moved back in. Some people at work already knew because Luke's wife knew through family. There was even talk that they might have gone away that weekend, just the two of them, while Grace had told me she needed time alone. Luke did not tell me that last part cruelly. He almost did not want to say it. But once it was in the room, it changed something for me. Before that, some small, pathetic part of me had still been trying to soften what happened. Maybe she was confused. Maybe it was sudden. Maybe she panicked. Maybe she had not known what she wanted. But hearing that she had likely spent that weekend away with him while I was checking my phone and trying to act normal around my daughter, stripped the whole thing down to what it probably was. She had known enough to lie. I went to my truck after work and sat there for 10 minutes with both hands on the steering wheel. I wanted to call her again. I wanted to send one message, not begging, not even asking her back, just saying what kind of person does that to someone. What kind of woman lets a man spend a whole weekend feeling sick and confused while she is off deciding whether to replace him? I wanted to tell her she had used me, that she had looked me in the eye and made me feel chosen when I was really just convenient. I did not send anything. That was my limit. There is a point where reaching out is no longer honesty and becomes self-abandonment. I had been tempted. God, I had been tempted. But I would not hand her one more piece of my dignity so she could ignore that too. I deleted the draft I had typed and drove home. That was the second important decision I made. I would not chase her for an explanation she had already failed to give when it mattered. What I could not stop, though, was the ripple effect. Dana kept taking little shots, nothing big enough to point to legally or dramatically, just comments, questions, tiny poisoned needles. She would ask Lily in front of me whether Daddy still had house guests. She would mention lawyers again with that fake offhand tone. Once she texted me a photo Lily had drawn and followed it with, "Glad she only has one mysterious sibling to worry about." I did not respond. I started saving everything. Then my mother called. My mother was not a dramatic woman, which meant if she called in the middle of a workday sounding hesitant, something had really gotten to her. She asked me directly if there was any truth to what Dana's family had been saying. Not accusing, not hostile, just tired and confused. That one stung. I told her no, of course not. I explained everything from the beginning. The bar, Grace, the timeline, Noah's age, Dana's comment. My mother listened quietly. When I finished, she sighed in this long, disappointed way and said she believed me, but I needed to understand something. People were talking because Dana was talking, and the longer I let it float around unanswered, the more some people would assume silence meant guilt. That created another choice. I hate public clarifications. Hate them. They always feel cheap, like you are stepping into mud just to explain why you are not dirty. But my mother was right about one thing. Dana's version had gotten a head start, and if I kept treating it like it was too ridiculous to deserve a response, it would keep spreading on its own. So I did something I normally would never do. I called Dana's mother directly. That was decision number 3. I did not yell, I did not insult her. I did not. I told her plainly that the rumor was false, that the child in question was the son of a woman I had briefly dated, that the ages made the accusation impossible, and that if she repeated it to Lily again, I would treat that as interference where my daughter was concerned and act accordingly. I also told her I knew exactly where the rumor had started. She tried to squirm away from it, said people were only concerned, said maybe Dana had misunderstood, said no one meant harm. I cut through that and said concern is asking me privately once. Concern is not feeding gossip to a 9-year-old. She had no good answer to that. Then I called my aunt, the one who had been repeating things, and shut it down there too. Same facts, same calm voice, same refusal to play defense beyond the truth. It was humiliating but effective. Within a week, the weird calls stopped. Dana, though, did not stop. She just changed tactics. One Friday at pickup, she stood beside my car while Lily buckled in and asked very quietly whether Grace had dumped me for the kid's father. I turned and looked at her. The satisfaction on her face lasted maybe half a second before she covered it. But I saw it, that tiny flicker. She already knew, or guessed enough. And she wanted to see me react. It was such a mean, small, ugly moment that all at once the whole pattern came into focus. The surprise when she had first seen Grace. The questions, the rumor, the jabs. This was not about Noah, not really. It was not even about Lily. It was about the fact that she had walked into my place expecting the same lonely man she left behind, and instead found proof that somebody else had wanted to sit on my couch and build a sundae with me. Grace had been right. Dana had been jealous. Not jealous in the romantic fairy tale way, nothing that flattering. She did not want me back. I do not believe that. But she did not want me fully moved on either. She wanted me available as a known quantity. A man she could leave, criticize, inconvenience, and still imagine as fixed in place. That realization did not heal me. It just made me angry in a cleaner way. I told her my personal life was no longer her entertainment. I told her if she had something to discuss about Lily, we could discuss it. Otherwise, she needed to step back from my car. She gave me that old incredulous look, like I was being dramatic, but I did not budge. Eventually, she stepped away. Lily was silent for the first few minutes of the drive. Then she said, "Mom was in a bad mood a lot lately." I kept my eyes on the road and just said that was between her mother and her mother. I was not going to poison Lily against Dana, no matter how much Dana made it tempting. That was my other moral line. I would defend myself, but I would not recruit my daughter into the war. The hardest part of that season was how empty ordinary things became. The first Saturday, I did not have Grace to text. The morning dragged like wet laundry. I cleaned my kitchen twice, folded clothes that were already folded, turned the TV on and muted it. There were places in my apartment that felt marked now. The edge of my sink where she had left a hair tie once. The kitchen stool where she used to sit with one knee up while I made coffee. The strip of hallway where Noah had toddled past, carrying a wooden spoon like he was on a mission. I had not just lost a woman. I had lost a set of possible futures my mind had already started furnishing. That is the humiliating part about heartbreak in adulthood. You are not only grieving what was real, you are grieving everything your mind quietly built around it without permission. For a while, I became the kind of man who replays conversations in the shower, who hears his phone buzz and feels that dumb jump in his chest before remembering it is probably a weather alert or a coupon, who lies to friends and says he is good because he cannot stand the sound of his own disappointment anymore. But something shifted after about 3 weeks, not into peace, nothing that nice, more like clarity. It happened on a Tuesday after work. I was cleaning out old messages because my phone storage was full, and I landed on the thread with Grace. I scrolled farther up than I meant to, past the breakup, past the dry little check-ins, back into the early messages, the hopeful ones, the warm ones, then the middle period, where something subtle had changed before I admitted it had. Her replies shorter, her delays longer, her enthusiasm thinning out while mine stayed steady. Seeing it laid out like that, not in memory but in black and white, was brutal. It also freed me a little, because it showed me something I had resisted. The end had not come out of nowhere. I had been feeling it. I had noticed enough. I just did what lonely people do sometimes. I translated warning signs into temporary stress because the truth would have required me to pull back before I was ready. That does not make what she did okay. It does make it real. I deleted the whole thread. My hand shook when I did it. That surprised me. It was just data, but it felt like shutting a door I had been standing in too long. After that, I started making smaller, practical repairs to my life. I picked back up at the gym, not because I was suddenly noble and balanced, but because anger needs somewhere to go if you do not want it leaking onto everyone around you. I started keeping Lily busier on my weekends, so the apartment did not feel like a museum of one failed relationship. We went to a science center one Saturday, mini golf another weekend. Once we drove to a state park and froze our way through a trail neither of us was dressed for. It was awkward at first because I had let myself go dull. Then it got easier. One Sunday, Lily asked if I was sad about Grace. I asked why she thought that. She shrugged and said Dad's got sad too, probably. I laughed at that. Then I told her yes, a little. She nodded like that answer made sense and asked if I still wanted pancakes. That was one of the best things she ever did for me. She let sadness be ordinary for a second. Not a speech, not a wound on display, just something true that could exist in the same morning as pancakes. Around the same time, Dana's boyfriend dropped out of the picture. I only know because Lily mentioned he was not around anymore, and Dana started getting sharper than usual. There was one evening she called about switching weekends and somehow wandered into talking about how people always disappoint you. I could hear the bait in it, the invitation to compare wounds maybe, or reopen old doors. I did not take it. That was another kind of freedom I had not expected, realizing not every open door deserves a step through it. I kept conversations with Dana narrow after that. Logistics only, schedules, school, pickups. If she made a comment about my life, I ignored it. If she pushed, I repeated the same boundary. Eventually, when a tactic stops getting fed, even a person like Dana gets tired of using it as often. Months passed. I heard here and there things about Grace without trying to. That she and Andrew were arguing again. That they were trying counseling. That he had not changed as much as promised. That she looked tired. That maybe she was pregnant. That maybe she was not. Small-town adjacent gossip traveling through cousins, wives, and co-workers who did not understand that every second-hand detail still landed somewhere in me. I did not reach out. Not once. Once, though, she reached toward me in the smallest cowardly way possible. It was late. I was in bed. My phone lit up with her name after months of silence. My whole body reacted before my pride did. I opened it. It was not an apology. It was not a confession. It was a single sentence asking if I still had a grey sweater she thought she might have left at my place. I stared at that message and actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was incredible. After everything, after the silence, after the humiliation, after dropping me by text and vanishing back into the life she chose, that was how she appeared again. Not to explain, not to own what she had done. A sweater. I walked to the hall closet and checked. Sure enough, there it was, pushed behind a stack of winter scarves. I stood there holding it, and for 1 weak second, I thought about how easy it would be to answer. How easy it would be to turn one message into two, two into 10, and 10 into another slow collapse where I told myself I just wanted closure. Then I thought about the weekend she lied. I thought about Lily hearing gossip from adults who should have protected her. I thought about the kitchen table, the deleted thread, the weeks of dragging myself out of a hole she had helped dig. I folded the sweater, put it in a bag, and texted Luke that his wife could return it to Grace whenever convenient. I did not message Grace at all. That was the cleanest thing I did in the whole story. A few days later, Luke told me Grace had gotten it. He also said she seemed surprised I had not answered directly. I told him that was fine. Let her be surprised. There is a kind of quiet dignity in becoming unavailable to the people who only know how to reach for you when it costs them nothing. By the time winter was ending, my life was not magically better, but it was mine again. Dana still had her moods. Lily still spent too much time on her phone. Work was still work. I still had nights where the apartment felt too quiet, but the paralysis had loosened. I was moving forward, even if it did not feel noble or cinematic. Sometimes healing is ugly and repetitive, and mostly made of not sending the message you want to send. The strangest part is that for a long time I had blamed myself almost more than I blamed Grace. I told myself I should have known better. That I was too old to fall that hard for a recently separated woman with a toddler and a messy ex. That maybe I got what I deserved for ignoring obvious risk. There was truth in some of that. I should have been more careful. But one evening, almost a year later, I was washing dishes after Lily had gone home, and I caught myself thinking about Grace again, not with that old sharp pain, just with distance. And what came to me then was this. Being trusting is not the same as being foolish. Wanting happiness is not a character flaw. Loving badly chosen people is painful, yes, but it does not make you ridiculous. It makes you human. What matters is what you do after they show you who they are. I stopped answering doors that were only opening to see if I was still standing there. I stopped letting Dana use my confusion as entertainment. I stopped pretending rumors die on their own when what they really do is grow in silence. And I stopped telling myself that staying wounded was somehow a form of loyalty to what I had felt. The last real twist came from Lily. not from any of the adults. One afternoon, while we were driving back from buying her new sneakers, she looked out the window and said she liked me better now than when I used to be with Grace. I asked what she meant. She said before, I had acted like I was waiting for my phone to tell me how to feel. I did not answer for a second, because there was nothing to say to that except the truth. She was right. Kids see more than people think. They also forgive more than we deserve if we give them something steady to come back to. So that is what I tried to become after all of it. Not wiser in some grand way. Just steadier. Less hungry for rescue. Less willing to confuse intensity with honesty. More careful with the little life I had rebuilt. I do not know what happened between Grace and Andrew after that. Not really. I heard pieces, but I stopped collecting them. Some stories do not need updates. Once they break you and teach you what they came to teach, their sequel is none of your business. Dana never apologized either. Not for the rumor, not for dragging Lily into it, not for any of those little satisfied looks when she thought she had found a bruise to press. But she lost something anyway. She lost access to the version of me that still reacted to every hook she threw. And Grace lost something too, whether she knows it or not. She lost the man who would have opened the door every time, believed every soft explanation, and stayed available just in case she changed her mind. That man is gone. I do not say that with bitterness now. I say it with relief. Because for a while after she left, I kept thinking the worst part of the story was that she chose somebody else. It was not. The worst part was how close I came to letting that choice define my worth. It did not. And that is why when I think back to the day Dana stood in my living room, looked at a toddler on my couch, and tried to turn my loneliness into a scandal, I no longer remember it as the beginning of some humiliation. I remember it as the first crack in a lie I had been telling myself for years, that I was stuck, that I needed somebody to choose me before I could move, that the life in front of me only mattered if another person stayed in it. None of that was true. The rumor died. Grace disappeared. Dana stayed Dana. Lily kept growing, and I finally learned that some people do not come into your life to love you. They come to show you exactly where your boundaries should have been. What would you do in this situation? Be honest, or did this remind you of someone? Tell me in the comments. And if this made you think about your own relationship, I left something in the description that can help you build something stronger. Subscribe if you want more stories like this every day, and share this with someone who needs to hear this story.